Hello and welcome to the 20th episode of the Adoption and Fostering Podcast. You're listening to Scott, Cass and Rennie and...
Al Coates. That S on the end is just so... You need to pronounce it, I feel.
Coates. Yes,
Quets.
You're rocking your stereotype there, aren't you?
I am, sorry.
No,
sorry,
it's fine.
Apologies.
You're many things, but you're not a stereotype. I'll talk to you about that afterwards. No, anyway. Well, hello. This is the 28th episode, and we shouldn't be just piffle-paffle, tittle-tattling, should we?
No, we should be professionals at this stage.
We should.
Our second year and all that.
I got an email from someone to the podcast email address saying, "Hi, I've listened to your podcast, and it's great. I work making podcasts better. Do you think I could help?" I went,
oh, really?
Yeah, I think it was spam. It wasn't spam.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I think it was proper advertising, but I'll just say, no, we like slapdash. It kind of suits our personalities.
Yeah, it's true.
It's true.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So anyway, how are you? You've been on holiday.
I have, yeah. I've been back a week, though, but yeah, I've been on holiday. Had a lovely time.
Rested,
nice
recovered?
Yeah.
Trying to convince yourself.
I am, really. No, it was nice to get some sun on the old bones and definitely needed. Came at the wrong time, really, with kind of the conference coming up, but I can have my nervous breakdown after that rather than before it.
Has Sue Armstrong-Brown kind of penciled that in your calendar?
Yeah, but I think myself and Jack, who've been organising all, have definitely got nervous breakdowns penciled in our calendar for the week after next. But I'm sure once the day has happened, I'm sure we will start to go,
yes,
and everything will get back to normal, and everything will be lovely jubbly.
That sounds wonderful. I mean, it is a lot of work. I have to say that there's a real buzz about this conference. I'm not going, but there seems to be a real buzz. And I know we're not here to talk about your work, and I know but I just think that it's interesting, and I don't know whether that reflects Sue Armstrong-Brown coming in and kind of a new wave of enthusiasm, or what do you think?
You're evil, you are.
Or is it down to your cunning marketing?
Wow. I remember that day, that very long day where a certain Mr. Thornbury said, "Oh, would you like to?" Now, he knew I'd been wanting to do it for the last 2 years.
Right.
And, the guys who used to do it, very good job they did. But I just think that it just needed something. It just needed a bit of a refresh in terms of how we approached it. I think the topic matter this year is of massive interest to a lot of people.
Which is?
It's education, isn't it? Trauma and attachment in the classroom. So, that's a massive pool for people to come along and listen to the people that we've got talking. But I think secondly, there's been a lot more of a kind of team effort this year in terms of it's gone wider within the organisation. And, myself and Jack have been doing it on top of the day job. So we've really had to pull in kind of time from other people to say, can you do this, can you do that? And I think everybody's gotten involved. So I think that's what's making it kind of more, the marketing has been a lot bigger this year. I wouldn't say better, but it's been bigger. And I think that's made a massive difference. Yeah,
a bit smarter in that sense. Because I wanted to go, and I went to one in 2053. It's very lonely. No, I went in 2007, 6, 5, 4.
Okay. Yeah. Before my time.
Before your time, yeah. You probably weren't
both ways.
In lots of ways.
I wasn't even an adopter there.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I went along, and it felt very, very. There was a sense of an old guard there, of people who were kind of like, we set this up around a kitchen table, but that's gone. I presume that's gone. So I did want to go, but unfortunately Paula's got some sort of party weekend somewhere that she's pre-booked. So I'm child wrangling the whole weekend.
Oh, well, you'll just have to keep an eye on Twitter then with the hashtag AUKConf, wouldn't you?
Oh, you're like a marketing wunderkind, aren't you?
There,
yeah. I might write a scathing blog out of malice on next Friday. Sometimes I like about Tuesday, because I write my blogs and I put them out on a Friday. Sometimes about Tuesday, I think this week I'm gonna blow this whole thing wide open. Not that there's anything to wide open, but then I usually just write something nice and pithy.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a couple of kind of new things that I've brought into it this year. One is I'm hoping that this will work, but we've got a social media wall this year at the conference.
Ooh, that's exciting.
So as people tweet using the hashtag, it should, he says, come up on the wall. Kind of comments, questions.
So do you have to write them on by hand onto the wall? Is it like a low-tech media wall?
No, it's proper proper Twitter thing.
I just have visions of you with a chalkboard.
Yeah, I know, as I'm chairing it. And then, but I mean, we've obviously discussed loads of different ideas, which we will probably attempt to do next year, because we've obviously got the lead into it. You know, we've tried to be able to film it and do it as a webinar and all that sort of stuff, but it's just not been possible with this kind of the resource that we've got. But hopefully next year we will be on that, because actually it should be accessible, and we all think the same thing. We're all of the same kind of.
I know YouTube do YouTube Live now as well, don't they? I mean, we do Facebook Live even. So
exactly.
It's becoming much more accessible, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just everybody
limited
thinks of
time
Adoption UK as this massive thing, but it's not. And we just have to kind of do what we can with what we've got, and we try and do as much as we can. Yeah. Hence the reason we've been doing it on top of our day jobs. So, but that's next year. This year, hopefully it'll be fabulous, and it will kind of hit the spot for everybody.
Right. Well, I shall watch social media with interest and snipe from afar.
No doubt.
No doubt. Have you noticed this week that I've been having an existential crisis because it's been National Adoption Awareness Week, which is a US thing. Not week, sorry, month. Yeah. November, linked to Movember, maybe? No, it's not. No, that was stupid. I don't know why I even said that.
That's like me saying adoption is like cupcakes, Al. So don't make that.
I've penciled Cupcake Week in my diary, and I'm going to send you cupcakes every day.
Fabulous. Yeah. Anyway, go
on. And I spoke to the interview this week with Rebecca, one of my many children, and then it kind of coincided with the whole National Adoption Awareness Week, which has been really interesting because I've seen there's voices that I didn't necessarily hear in National Adoption Week. A lot of adoptees kind of really I'd try to be. I think my challenge this week is I want to be really careful that I don't in any way upset anyone, or say anything that's going to cause offence. Inevitably, someone will be upset because that's the nature of the world, isn't it? And people in general, not naming any specific types of people. But what I want to do is to really highlight those adopted voices, because I think that we have a platform, and we occupy a space that's perhaps that's unique within the UK, and we're the only podcast in the UK and that I know of. But we don't have. You're pulling your face. Is there any other UK?
Just the way you said that. No, it's just the way you said it.
Oh, there's first for adoptions. That's embarrassing. Yeah, there is another one.
Well, yeah, but it's not really kind of.
It's a different kettle of fish, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's still reasonably good.
Yeah, reasonably good. I'm so telling.
Sorry, Chris, if you're listening, which I think you probably are, because you're probably waiting on us to slate it. I would never slate first for adoption. I think they're fabulous. There, I said it out loud.
You should just stop. Just stop talking.
I know. I will.
Stop talking.
No.
Stop it.
So anyway, handing over to Al.
Right.
For the rest of the podcast.
If you could just nod. You've got to. I'm really.
There's our funding pool. That's exciting.
Yeah. That was the end of that then.
Yeah.
But what I was conscious of, and I started to think about putting Rebecca's interview out, which is a really short interview, and I don't think there's anything salacious on. But what I started to realise,
it's fabulous.
Did you?
I really do. Yeah, I did. Actually, right. I was. It's one of those. You sent it to me, and I was thinking, right, I'll listen to that. So I did listen to it, and it was normally with the ones that you send me, I listen to them in chunks because obviously they're generally quite long, and I kind of squeeze them in before we then do a podcast. But with this one, and it was short, so that probably helped. But actually, it was just amazing listening to her. Actually, not just because of her accent, because I love her accent. Well, but she's just so knowledgeable and very open and honest about what she felt about it. And the 15-year-old bit, I could just, as soon as she said that, I was like, yep, that's right. About 15, that's when it kind of started in terms of their awareness of themselves and things like that. And it's just so real. And I totally agree with you. And I think that a lot of people think that, I mean, we've got lots of different kind of organisations doing different things. And I'm talking about it from work perspective. Yeah. Obviously, my thing is about Adopt a Voice, but that doesn't mean to say that, there's not other voices out there. And just because what I want to say with this is that, my focuses on adopted voices, but actually other organisations are focusing on the adoptee voice. So, you've got things like ATID and Talk Adoption in Wales, and After Adoption do a lot of stuff. But actually, it's not done kind of wider than just some specific areas. And I think that's what the issue is, really. Is
there's no collective, is there?
Yeah. And you've got things like the Quorum Adoptables, and that is kind of trying to do the nationwide thing, but it's just really,
But even that's age limited, isn't it? And it's just raised so many really interesting thought processes this week, which, to be honest with you, I became quite overwhelmed, and I tried to make sense of all of these contrasting voices, because a lot of the voices that are coming up through the NAA, the National Adoption Awareness Week, are perhaps US voices, and of course, there's universal themes that they come back to, around loss and separation, around life story work, but in the mix of all that, there's cultural stuff around, because it's a different system, it's a different adoption culture, and it's really hard, because I've seen a few exchanges between adopters and adoptees, where standing back, you can see they're talking about it's a common language, but it's they're talking perhaps about different things, and you go, and you can see people getting perhaps offended or feeling not listened to, or people struggling to communicate, and you're kind of going, oh man, I totally get what you're saying, and I totally get what you're saying, but actually we're probably saying the same thing. So that's really challenging.
And even some of the conversations that I've seen, I mean, I have to admit to not being on social media too much this week, but some of the conversations that I've seen as well, adoptee to adoptee.
Yeah.
Some of them really disagree with adoption in general. Some of them really, find that it made them, and that kind of stuff. And it just shows that actually our assumption, well, it's the wrong thing to do, is make an assumption, isn't it? But some people just assume that everybody would eventually come out the other side and go, yeah, that was fabulous. Not everybody does. Not everybody does.
Yeah, really complex. And I think that this week has really opened my eyes to that, because I think, and it mirrors some of the issues that you have with Adopt a Voice, and the work we do when we go to the DFE, is that you're trying to synthesize all of these views, and there's such a spectrum of views, from people who, in an adoption sense, people who've had fantastic adoption, who probably aren't very represented on social media, if I'm honest, because they, for a whole host of reasons, to the people at the other extreme that have experienced the worst possible outcomes, and you're trying, and you those two things don't. They're almost like parallel lines that will never meet. You can't find a common experience. Yes, you've been through a system together, but actually, how and that's the challenge for things like Adopt a Voice. But thinking of adoptees, but one of the things that's kind of really challenged me this week, and after I'd spoken to Rebecca, because Rebecca, she's very thoughtful and mindful of stuff. So we chatted, and she's at an interesting stage in her life, but we chatted through those stuff, and then we had this conversation that went on afterwards. It was quite profound, and I think I touched on it in my blog this week about. Do you know I've got a blog?
Yeah, I did.
All right, okay.
This week, so.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm just
bored of them.
Yeah, me too. I get bored of them otherwise. But my reflection was that how well do any parents ever know their children in general?
Yeah.
And I thought that now I'm in probably like you, I'm in a stage of my life where I'm probably more open and real with my parents than I've ever been. My mum, my dad passed 2 years ago. But when I was 20, I didn't tell them anything. I told them what I felt they needed to know and how I interacted with them. And I think that must be true of adopted parents and children as well. That we're all desperate to know what's going on in our children's heads. And I put out a tweet saying, I'm looking for adoptees to speak to for the podcast. Just thought actually really interesting, and that's a whole thing in itself. And something like 25 retweets, all by adopters.
Yeah. Not
by adoptees. Got a few people confused who misread and thought they were wanting this. So a few people contacted me who were adopters wanting to, and I said, no, I'm after adopters. That was a bit awkward. Very awkward. But actually it just shows that we're all desperate to know what's going on inside our children's heads.
Yeah, I think we all are, and I think we're all looking for answers as well. And answers that we're not necessarily going to get from speaking to 2 or 3 adoptees. Are you under attack there?
I am. I'm just one of my. I'll be about 10 minutes. Okay. She's just come in. She's been on a sleepover. She'll probably rip my head.
She'll be like, yeah, she'll be hell.
She's going to get knives and weapons.
Yeah, and a shovel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. I just don't think that even by speaking to 1 or 2 adoptees, we're going to get those answers that we would love to have. And I feel exactly the same as you right now, because I've got a kind of 19-year-old who just gone back to work after being away for the summer, and seems to think that he's entitled to everything. And I don't. It's one of those situations where you think, well, is this to do with him being adopted, or is this just normal 19-year-old? And it's kind of we had a conversation yesterday about because obviously he's nearly 20, and so far we haven't had an ounce of what my mum and dad would have called housekeeping out of him,
Yeah.
Or rent, as the common person would call it. But we had this conversation. He's like, "Well, I'm not paying rent. You don't pay rent to live here." "No, because I pay a mortgage." And
what a random.
Yeah. But that lack of understanding. But it's also, I speak to people and I'm like, "Does your teenager do this?" And they're like, "Yeah." But that can be the same for. But I think that if you put the added elements of pressure on there, so things like I don't know, his phone has been cut off because he didn't have any income to pay the bill, and obviously we're not paying it for him. And if you add kind of the pressure he feels about that, and I guess there's shame attached to it, and there's blame attached to it, and all that kind of stuff for him, add all that into that, and it just it's like an atomic bomb waiting to go off. Yeah, exactly. But I don't think that if I spoke to Rebecca about the same things, would her responses be the same? I don't know. I don't know if she would deal with it. And that's the issue, isn't it? Everybody is so different. And as parents, we are dealing with similar behaviours, but actually the root cause is maybe different. But we just want to deal with the behaviour.
Yeah.
So that's why I think we've got something common. Does that make sense, or am I just talking rubbish?
No, that does make sense. I mean, the question every adopter is constantly asking themselves: is this normal, or is this a normal situation that's been influenced by some of the childhood, early life experiences, or is the root cause of this early life experiences that's working out in a normal way? Yeah. And crikey, if we knew that, we'd be rich men, wouldn't we? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we would. Yeah,
we'd do a book tour and sell it.
Oh, blimey!
I'll say we could. Yeah. I did get some. When I put my tweet out, I did get quite a few people come back to me, adoptees, and it was really interesting because even that made me. Do you know? I felt really uncomfortable. And this is perhaps me. I know that I can be overly reflective and I can be overly introspective, but I started to think. It felt really patriarchal to kind of say to people, would you come on my little podcast for adopters? And would you share them your experience? And I thought, am I patronising? And there's a few people rightly asked, what's your audience? What they're expecting? And I tried to give an overview of that. But then I thought, if there was an exclusively adoptee podcast and I was invited on, how would I feel? Would I be able to go into that environment? And just it started to make me think about this power dynamic that even runs through to, like now, we have adopter voice, but we don't have adoptee voice. We have, and that's it's not a criticism of it. It's just a reflection of the fact that we weigh our voices above the voice of adoptees. Yeah, and I was thinking. So like with the Rebeccas, I said let's just record it, and we chatted. I didn't think it through, thank heavens. But I was thinking, one thing that my social work training has taught me is around how we ask questions. So like if I ask you any question, I'm kind of taking control of what you tell me. If I ask you what's your favourite colour, but you want to tell me that you like eating chips, again. This is perhaps too big. I've got control of that narrative. I've got control of the interview. So if I have someone who comes in the podcast and they say, I'm an adoptee, and I ask them 5 questions, But actually, they may not want to tell me those 5 questions. They might want to talk about, I'm asking them about A, B, and C, and they're wanting to talk about X, Y, and Z. So I started to have a really existential moment about going, actually, do I even want, is it right to even invite adoptees on? Am I controlling the narrative? Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, from my perspective, I don't think you are. I think that maybe the kind of layout of it needs to be a little bit different. Maybe if it's, if we're expecting someone to come on and say, whatever it is they need to say, I think you need to just give them that opportunity. And I don't think it should be kind of led. I think you should have, if you're going to do something like that, then there needs to be some kind of basic questions that maybe we could
lead into it.
Exactly, rather than kind of dictating what the conversation is. Because yeah, you're right. But I also think that we know some of the kind of issues that we have as parents, and if you had an adoptee who is quite able to be open about their experience, so they may have been one of these people who've been physical with their parents or something like that, and on reflection actually they've had therapy, or they maybe just grown out of it, or whatever has happened, to be able to discuss that and say, how did you feel at the time? Because it's all very well us saying, well, we feel hurt and we feel violated, and we weren't informed about this, but actually, how did you feel about that? How and I have that conversation with Jacob quite a lot, and I did when the Radio 4 file thing came out, because we talked about it as we listened to it, and he was very honest about the fact that he doesn't like being like that. But actually, we don't take that into account when we're going through it, and we also don't take that into account afterwards, because we're probably just so relieved it's over and done with that we don't actually go back and go, how are you feeling? Because it's about us. If that makes sense.
No, that totally does. That's a huge issue, because I think that in the mix of all of this stuff that we've done around CPV, we've also potentially shamed all. We've shamed all of these children, and I think we've tried not to, but sometimes that criticism has been bounced back at me. Rightly, I need to. People need to constantly challenge that assumption that, are you stigmatizing these children who are already potentially stigmatized? So
definitely not our intention, is it? But you can see why people would think that.
Well, and that takes me back. Some people. The challenge is that some people will be offended.
Yeah.
So do you say nothing in that case? Because there's a lot of activists out there that are, they're quite, if I can be really frank, quite barbed. To me, I feel are quite barbed and prickly. Maybe I would be barbed and prickly having lived their life. But that makes it really hard to engage, because I do want to engage. Having said that, there's a lot that aren't. Having said that, there's a lot of adopters that are barbed and prickly as well. So I'm a equal opportunities. I see that everywhere. Really. But people are people, aren't they?
Yeah, of course they are. Yeah, exactly.
Do we all get?
I mean, it's interesting. It is interesting, and I think you're right. I think that even though American kind of adoption can be different, I think there's a very similar narrative from what I can kind of pick up. And I know I was going to do some work last year for the podcast in America, and I didn't get who I wanted to be able to do it. But I do think that there's a lot of similarities, and I know there is one American adopter on. Oh.
I'm looking.
Oh my days!
I can't believe you heard that. Yeah.
What was that?
It's a horse.
Yeah, I know it's a horse. I see now, folks. This just proves that Al Coates, working man as you think he is not working man. He's got 6 horses.
Man of the people. Hang on.
Yeah. He's not working class at all.
He's many things, but I'm not a man of the people. There's a horse just walked past. I'll take a picture.
Yeah.
And I'll post it on Facebook.
Yeah.
I'll tweet
so what was I saying? Yeah. So I know of one adopter on Twitter actually who we all speak to actually, and some of the issues she has is very similar. I guess it's different kind of reasons as to how she became an adopter, but it's proof in itself that the narrative is very similar, even though the kind of, I guess, the support and how adoption happens in the US is very different to the UK.
Yeah.
And if we think that we're quite badly treated in the UK, and this isn't meant to stir up any trouble, but we we do have a lot more support than they do in America. But like I say, the reasons for some adoptions in America are very different to what they are here nowadays. Even though you can adopt from fostering and stuff in America. I mean, we know that, but it is very different. And
Yeah, I think as perhaps one of the things I'm seeing a lot of this week is a lot of international sort of adoptees, which I think is probably a minority in the UK, isn't it? It's a small number, but there's quite a bigger proportion of international adoptees in the US.
Yeah, but you know what? No different to the I'm using this as an example. The raising the residential care thing to 21, that campaign that's going on. Very similar way, a couple of people who've experienced it have got together, care leavers, what have you. Just take maybe 5 or 10 people who want to get their voices heard about their experiences, and not necessarily going through it now, but they maybe have done in the past, to be able to come forward and get something going with it, and work with other things that are going on. So, adoptee voice, whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. It's about the kind of influence that it can have to be listened to make these changes that we all need. We can't afford to be fussy about who we work with and what organisation does this, who gets the money for it. Actually, it's just about making change for me.
Positive change, yeah. Well, that's interesting, because I think that this week I've started to, maybe the last few months, I've started to see a few British adoptees, kind of starting to resurface, and I understand that it's kind of I think in some ways they're checking out whether it's social media is a safe space for them, and we've found Twitter to be a really safe space. I find it is probably the safest place in my life. I very rarely do I get jip, though I did, but anyway, we'll not talk about the time I got jip recently, because quickly moving on.
Cheese toasty.
But I think there's an element of people just dipping their toe in the water and saying, is this a safe place? Are people willing to listen? And there was a blog came out this week from an adoptee that was just fantastically well received. And people are going, there's a lot of adopters going, I want to know this. I want to open my mind to your perspective, because in maybe this year or next year, my child is only tiny, but when they're 20 or 30 or 40, I want to have that information.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the tricky thing as well, because I think that, you're very, you're probably kind of on the cusp with, as an example, Rebecca, with the age to be able to actually verbalise how they feel about stuff like that, because, and I think that's the tricky thing. It's how do you capture those voices at the age of 12, at the age of 13, at the age of 8 even, to be able to kind of make that change. Because actually there's, I do make a little bit of a joke about this, but there's a difference between wanting a new iPad from your parents, if you had something like Adoptee Voice, and what's the biggest thing that you want in your life? Well, I want an iPad, kind of thing. To get to the age that Rebecca's at, where actually there's some things that I picked up on, especially around school and things like that, where actually you could kind of influence some change, being able to say that in a forum where actually schools or teachers or educators are listening to be able to make that, but you might not necessarily get that message at the age of 12.
Yeah. And I guess it's an evolving view as well. I think the blog I read this week was fantastic, because it sort of said how I felt at 20 was not how I felt at 30, was not how I felt at 30, 40, 50. And you go, which is probably like all of us. We reserve the right to feel differently as we can change,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hey, do you think we've prattled on? We were going to do a really brief intro and then an outro.
We were, especially because I normally need alcohol to talk to you, but I'm on a cup of tea today. So.
And a cup of tea, maybe. And I'm on the Pepsi Max.
Excuse me, child, can you make me another cup of tea, please?
Yes, one of mine's just appeared because it's a Saturday. She's gone up. Yeah, give me 2 minutes.
Are you nearly done?
2 minutes.
I'm timing you.
She's timing me. I might leave that in.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. Do you have anything to add afterwards, or should we just let it play out?
I think we just let it play out.
Cool.
But I think it's really informative, and I think that actually, it's just a good listen.
Yeah, I have to say one caveat that kept me awake at night is that at one point I say, let's go and burn the school down. I'd like to point out now that I do not condone burning schools down in any way whatsoever.
Wow, you say that. Yeah.
No, I do say that. I really do say that. I do not condone burning schools down. And it was a flippant joke that had a context that I'm not going to describe, but
yeah. Well, of course it is.
It's a joke. Yeah. It's a joke. HCPC Baswa, it's a joke. I'm joking.
Can we just HCPC Baswa DFE?
DFE. My mum.
We have to fund the school being rebuilt.
Yeah. Northumbria Constabulary, local
in the
education
same way,
authority.
you know, my joke earlier about First for Adoption that you made a big deal out of was not that big a deal.
We should. I should put an official
disclaimer
at the end. Yeah,
big disclaimer on the end of this. Saying apologies to these mentioned. We really love you because we do.
Yeah. We do. All views and opinions expressed by Scott and Al are rubbish. and are not legally bindable. And if anything was offensive, it was meant to be a joke, and if it was meant to be funny and it wasn't, we're sorry.
Yeah.
Anywho, right, well, you have a cracking day and a weekend lead up to your conference, and I hope that everything that you hope to happen happens, and more besides.
Yes. See you after the breakdown.
Yeah. Normal service will be resumed shortly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, look after yourself.
Bye.
Bye-bye. So, Rebecca, favourite daughter. We were talking before, and it was really interesting because you were talking about how people react to you as an adoptee.
Yeah.
How open are you with people? That's a question, isn't
it? Not very. I don't tend to be, no.
I suppose in some ways it's no one's business, is it?
No.
But I remember
that's the way I see it.
Yeah. I remember when you were little, though, you were maybe a bit different. Because I remember a story when you were in school and you were little and you told everyone in the class. Do you remember that story?
No.
Do you not?
No.
Oh, there was a story because there was a little boy who came up to you afterwards. You told everyone. He'd never felt able to tell anyone. And he'd said, oh, because you said you're adopted, I feel I can say I'm adopted. Do you not remember that?
No. That's cute, though.
It is a cute story. Oh. You were telling me before about, because we were talking about Peanut the other week, weren't we, about how she, at school, there was this thing where she had to bring in baby photographs. And you told me something that happened to you at college. Tell me what happened.
Well, they decided to do a bit of a game where you bring in a baby photo of yourself and you don't show anybody else. And everyone has to guess whose baby photo is whose.
Uh-huh.
I don't actually have any baby photos.
No, but neither do I.
So I said, no, I'd rather not. They said it was optional, so I said I don't want to. But it just got to the point that they were like, why? And they kept pushing me to join in. It's just a bit of fun. Everyone has embarrassing baby photos, and in my head I was like, oh, I don't. So it was a bit uncomfortable. And it just got to the point that I just told them that I was adopted, just to get them off my back. And it was just my tutors, I didn't tell anyone else.
Yeah.
But we were just pushing, and I just was like, no.
Because, I mean, by then you're an adult. I mean, you were,
exactly.
what, 17, 18?
18.
18.
Mm-hmm.
It seems really odd that they wouldn't just accept a no from you.
Mm-hmm. They just thought I was being a party pooper, not very fun, just trying to be awkward on purpose kind of thing, which does sound like me.
I'm saying nothing. I really am saying nothing about that. So, but then did they tell other people, or was it just, how did they respond when they said, oh, you know?
Oh, they did, I don't think they told anybody else, not that I'm aware.
Not. They wouldn't have done that. No, they wouldn't have done that.
But everyone, as soon as they find out you're adopted, they kind of just feel dead sorry for you. And they all look at you like your puppy's just died. And then, and they're, oh, no, I'm so sorry. Like, why? Nobody's died.
Maybe they've met me.
Maybe. It would be surprising. But it's always as if, like, someone's just died in your family, and it's just, like, it's not a big deal. It's not a sad thing. If anything, it's a very positive thing. So it's like, it's a positive impact on that child's life. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, most of the time. I can't say for everyone, but for me, it has been. So
yeah,
I just don't understand people's reactions. But I suppose to me, it's normal. And sometimes people don't talk about it and they don't tend to have conversations about it, so they don't really think.
I mean, other than obviously your sister and brother and stuff, do you know any other adoptees?
Apparently that little boy from school.
Yeah, the one you chose to forget.
Amber, through you, but just because it's through you and Mum, and that's the only person.
Is it?
But I probably could know people that are adopted, but they might not just talk about it, because especially in high school, that was the last thing that I would have said. You don't tell people you're adopted.
Yeah, it's not
then
like,
you just become like, it's a thing,
yeah, my name's Rebecca and I'm adopted. Yeah. But I guess it's horrible that you got put in that situation where you had to you were forced into it. Cause but you're not embarrassed about it. Why are you embarrassed about it? Is it embarrassment or is it just private?
I used to be embarrassed about it.
Did you?
Not about like the family, just the fact that no.
Well,
just the fact that
normal embarrassment about your dad.
because when you like grow up, you get told that when you have a baby, you love it more than anything. You protect them, you take care of them, and for that to break down on your part, do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, it's not. You don't think is there something you've done wrong, but it's more of like, oh, well, she was meant to do this, and then she didn't. So it's just like a weird thing. I thought at the time, so I was a bit embarrassed about that. And I suppose in my head, everyone else had normal families. But when I got older, I realised that normal doesn't really exist. Yeah. It's like, do you know what I mean? It's just, so yeah, I was embarrassed about it, and now I'm just like, it's not your business.
No.
You can ask me questions, and I'll be like, well, get lost. I don't want to answer them, so.
But you're answering my questions.
Yeah, well, that's different, But anybody else, I just go away. Yeah,
that's really tricky, isn't it? I mean, how's it been? Because Mum and I are really out there, aren't we? Is that we're like, yay? But has that been difficult for you?
No.
We ever put you in a tricky spot? It's become like a parent counselling session, hasn't it?
No, I don't think so. I think there has been one time that I've been a bit like, But that's to do with biological families and adoptive families together.
Yeah.
And it's just weird because, in my opinion, my biological family are strangers to me. I don't care. Yeah. Like, obviously, they seem like lovely people, but they're not my family.
Yeah.
So it's weird, like, when my actual parents are talking to my biological family side of the family, it's like, oh.
Complicated.
And that's the only time that's a bit like, oh. But then that's just me and the fact that I'm so like, oh, I don't care, but I've got other siblings that do care, and I need to remember that.
It's complicated,
so I just keep myself out of the way because it just...
Very wise.
Well, yeah, but I know that I'm just a bit funny with people sometimes, so...
No, that's just your personality, isn't it? That's fine, that's totally cool. And what about having two adopted siblings? How's that? Because that's kind of weird. We've got three, sorry. How many? I'm just going to go through my fingers. Say,
I don't think it was ever weird. I can't remember ever feeling weird about it at all, because obviously we fostered the two little ones first.
Yeah.
And we weren't planning on adopting, but I don't think it ever felt strange. I think it was nice to be able to take other children that were in need in and have build a family unit around them. I think it was dead nice. I always said I wanted to adopt, so we made you adopt instead.
I guess we're a bit of a jigsaw family, aren't we? We're all kinds of waifs and strays, and, including myself in that. All right. Any other thoughts you have on adoption? In broader sense, or any sense?
Just that it's a good thing now that people seem to talk about it more than they did, because during high school I really struggled with the whole, oh, your family didn't want you kind of thing.
Right.
But then a different family. Yeah, it was actually.
Right. Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, it's. Well, I don't talk about things, do I? So
no, you know. You do though.
No, yeah, but I do and I don't. Yeah, I choose what I want to share, and if you want to get anything else out of me, good luck. Yeah. So it's not your fault. It's me.
But how old were you when that happened?
about 15.
All right.
So it was
Tell us who it was and we'll go around.
Well, quite a few people would say it. If it was more of a thing. It was more of a thing of as soon as they found out there was something different about your family, because I was totally fine. Nothing really was said. And then, because I told a couple of my friends, and that was it. Because they were always like, you look dead different. Mm-hmm. And like, obviously, because everyone used to say that.
Yeah, I see the
people used to look like each other.
Yeah.
And now, obviously, I'm the only one that looks completely different.
Well, not anymore, but yeah. Like the United Nations when you sit for dinner now. But
it used to be. And it was like, out of like the big three. So everyone was like, that's a bit strange.
Yeah. Because just, I guess for anyone who's listening, your older sister and your younger brother are like peas in a pod, aren't they?
Yeah. Obviously, both the same parents as well. But it was just, I think, as soon as, because everything was fine, I told some close friends, so they were always like, it's funny, isn't it? And I used to hate it. That used to really get me down, because I was like, I am the odd one out kind of thing. Yeah. I'm not, but I felt like that at the time. Yeah. So I told them and they stopped saying that, which was the goal. And I think, you know how it is in high school, you fall out with friends, and I think it got out, and it was horrible. I
didn't know that. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's horrible.
But that's what I mean, and because
you just said we'd have gone and burnt the school down for you.
I know that's fine, but I feel like nobody talked about it then. No, but people who I was at school with hadn't really heard of adoption. Mm-hmm. They didn't hear why adoption can happen. Do you know what I mean? It's not always a case of where people go. Ago, is it? It's not that long ago, but I think it's changing. Whereas people, I feel like I've heard people talk about it more. Right. Even though I'm adopted, like I heard it more than anybody else. And I think it's more of a positive thing where it's not always parents just go, don't want my child, here you go. They're just unable to look after. Do you know what I mean? So it's a bit different. It's not just
given away because we don't want you, sort of thing.
Because you don't have the right hair colour. Do you know what I mean? But that used to be said to me instead of, you must have looked funny when you. Do you know what I mean?
Which is horrible. Yeah.
Well, no, but do you know what I mean? And that's because they didn't. Because it used to be in my head when I flipping disliked my biological mum, and you always used to tell me actually it's just she was unable.
Yeah, we used to try engage and give you a different.
Mm-hmm. And I get that now, and I'm really grateful. But at the time, I was like, oh, they're right. That's why.
Yeah, and I guess 15, 16 is really tricky time anyway for everyone.
To try and manoeuvre around
identity and who you are and where you fit in the world.
So I think it's better that people are talking about it, and I think it should be more of a talked about subject.
Cool. And this is what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So literally 3 or 4 people are listening to this on my podcast. No, forget. No. Oh, well, is it anything else?
No, I think that's it.
Cool. Well, maybe come back to you. Maybe we should get your views on different subjects. I think because there's lots of subjects. I would like we've that we often, I think, adoptive parents are really worried about, and how do we manage things like like writing letters and stuff, because we used to write letters, and I think as you got older we included you in that. You saw them, didn't you? The letters that your mum would send out.
I think I got told about it, and Mum took a picture of us one time. Yeah. To send with the letter.
Yeah, and I think when you were
as an updated version, because it had been a while.
Yeah, things have changed. Yeah. And stuff around like life story, like little books you get when you were tiny. You've got your little albums with all the pictures and stuff like that. But we never really use them because we totally talk all the time, don't we? Mm-hmm. So I'd be interested to get your views about all that kind of stuff. So I might come back to you. Okay. We'll have a little slot. Rebecca talks. What's Rebecca think now?
Everyone will be listening to that one.
Literally dozens of people will double our listenership. Hey, well, that's great. Thank you very much.
Right on. Goodbye.
Bye.